Good morning from Hawaii, where I sincerely hope to be as I present to you. Although as I tape this last Thursday night, I'm not at all sure. And aloha. And sincere apologies for pre-recording my remarks at the close of your session. There's nothing like speaking after an esteemed panel and trying not to repeat what was already said, or worse yet, contradict you. So please forgive me if in any of those cases and accept my remarks as, if nothing else, a complete appreciation for an endorsement of your work. I'm sure you invited me as a member since 2019 of our House Appropriations Committee's subcommittee on the legislative branch. And as I'm sure Mr. Amodei has already commented, our small and relatively unknown corner of Congress is at the center of much of our collective efforts to improve the institution we love, and I'm happy to comment on our work here. But I also come to you in two other capacities. The first is as one of several members who previously served as legislative staff. And as all congressional staff throughout our history believe they know much more than the members, and I was certainly one of them, I took from that experience the belief that the perspective of those who work here year in and year out, often serving multiple members in multiple majorities, is invaluable to making for a better Congress, and I thank you for that. The second is as one who has also worked decades in the business world and has been responsible for managing the institutions I've served. From that, I took that while leaders of institutions come and go, just as do members in majorities, if the foundations of any institution are solid, it will survive and prosper over time. For perspective and foundation, I would also add adaptability. Our ability in any institution to adapt to a rapidly changing world, including our ability to challenge long-standing assumptions or practices and change where needed. Whole civilizations, the largest businesses, have risen and fallen on their ability or inability on this front. Why should the institution of Congress be any different? You have already heard at length from the Committee on House Administration, the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and the House Modernization Staff Association. I need not repeat those initiatives other than to say that each and all is invaluable in exactly their approach to inclusive and critical review, perspective, appropriate challenge to longstanding thinking, adaptability, and foundation building needed to continue a fully functioning Congress into the next generations. On my subcommittee on Ledge Branch, as we know it, where we are all responsible for all of oversight, policy, and funding for the far-flung operations of Congress, Chair Ryan, Ranking Member Herrera Butler, and my colleagues and staff on both sides of the aisle are full partners with you. In the House-passed fiscal year 2022 legislative branch appropriations bill, for example, and most recently, we sought to increase congressional office capacity, bolster supporting agencies like the Congressional Research Service, Government Accountability Office, and Legislative Council, foster a more diverse and representative congressional workforce, and improve transparency and accessibility of what happens on Capitol Hill, just for starters. We have made this progress with the help of our partners. The fiscal year 2021 legislative appropriations bill that we passed out implemented a process in the 117th Congress by which newly elected members can hire and pay a transition staff member. You can ask my chief, who was instrumental in setting up my office in the 116th Congress. This reform was desperately needed and was a recommendation from the Select Committee. This change has helped current freshman members hit the ground running and was made possible by the Select Committee and Ledge Branch working together. We also concerned ourselves with the physical condition of our Capitol complex. The architect of the Capitol estimates that the deferred maintenance backlog for our campus exceeds $1.8 billion. And our attempt to catch up is 37% of the total House Legislative Branch allocation for FY 2022. But even with all of this, there is still so much more to be done. Take our staff capacity. While the Speaker's decision to raise the maximum salary for staff is welcome news, especially as we look to retain experts in cybersecurity and other specialized fields, rank and file member offices with a standard members representational allowance of $1.5 million for all of our expenses are unable to keep up. Furthermore, the staff cap of 18 full-time staff and 4 part-time staff has not been raised since 1975, when members of Congress represented under 500,000 constituents each. Now, of course, we represent close to 750,000 average each, and most offices are unable to fully staff while paying their staff a competitive wage. And even if the staff cap was lifted, there generally isn't the office space to house more staff. The systemic issue of inadequate funding is also felt by supporting agencies like the Library of Congress and Architect of the Capitol, as well as by other legislative branch agencies like the Congressional Budget Office and Government Accountability Office. We must be better at explaining why these long-neglected investments in Congress are needed to improve our government so that it better works for the people. Furthermore, as we all know, the culture of Capitol Hill can be very resistant to change. Because of the tradition of members of Congress having full authority over their offices, like we're the monarchs of our own small kingdoms, mandates dictating how members should operate are unpopular. As just one example, it's still, quote-unquote, legal for members of Congress to smoke in their offices. Is there any good reason for that anymore? In all this, I return to the Alliance's mission, to strive for and achieve, quote, a Congress that earns the public trust by listening, leading, and legislating effectively for our diverse nation. To, quote, invest in our own capacity to tackle big issues and serve the public good. All of this will not happen in and of itself. In fact, the momentum of polarization and division, which would turn differences in policy and direction into attacks on our capacity and foundation, carries us away from that goal. In this difficult world, it is critical that we continue to band together around our common goals to resist and turn that tide wherever and whenever we can. Each and all of you are fellow travelers in that cause with the vast majority of members and the vast majority of Americans and of the world. Our Congress, our democracy, are worth our efforts. Mahalo.